This video will explain to you how you can provide a context sentence for your quotes that you cite inside of an essay or a short response. So a context sentence is a phrase or a sentence, two probably at the most, that helps your reader understand the quote and what's going on in the book at that time by providing a plot clue. So, how do I provide context? Well, the first thing you have to think of, if you look at the very bottom, if you were to just put a quote that said, transformed her rags into riches, that doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? For the most part, if this is all that you're saying, we don't really know who her is. We don't know when her rags were transformed into riches. It can be kind of confusing for the reader to try and figure out what you're trying to say and when this actually took place in the story. So we provide context so that our readers understand what it is we're trying to say and when this actually occurred in the book. So the first thing that you want to do is briefly identify, where in the plot this quote came from. So you could say some sort of meaningful event that came either before or after, or really it could even be during the quote. Okay, so I'm going to give you the example of Cinderella. It says, for example, so it's going to be during, as Cinderella began to weep because she did not have an outfit to wear to the ball, her fairy godmother, quote, transformed her rags into riches. So now we know that as Cinderella is weeping because she doesn't have an outfit to wear to the ball, something else, which is the quote, took place. Okay? So now in my mind, I can picture, all right, so her sisters have already gone to the ball. She is not able to go to the ball. She's weeping because she doesn't even have an outfit to wear. And that's where the quote comes in. Her fairy godmother helps to transform those rags into riches. So this plot context, this sentence that tells me where it is in the story, helps the reader to actually understand at what point her rags were transformed into riches and what was going on in Cinderella's mind at that time. Okay? So the first thing you want to do is briefly identify that plot event. The second thing you want to do is actually integrate your quote either into that sentence or the next sentence. So my example integrated it into that sentence. So I said, for example, as Cinderella began to weep because she did not have an outfit to wear to the ball, her fairy godmother, quote, transformed her rags into riches. And then I cited. If you want to make it into the next sentence, you would probably say, Cinderella began to weep because she did not have an outfit to wear to the ball. Period. Her fairy godmother transformed her rags into riches. That makes it a separate sentence. Really, it doesn't necessarily matter. Sometimes it will because your quote might not actually be directly related to the plot context that you're providing. So you might end up having to say, for example, the story states. So really, it just kind of matters on how you're explaining the context and how directly related it is to the quote. In this case, it's like cause and effect. Because she's weeping, the effect is her grandma or her fairy godmother transformed her rags into riches. It won't always be that cause and effect kind of model, so you might have to make it into two sentences just to make it make more sense. So the next thing that you want to make sure that you do, or want to avoid at least, is that your context sentences should range from a phrase to two sentences. They should definitely not be longer than that because it just gets kind of complicated and it's long. I don't want an in-depth summary of the entire story, and neither does your reader. That's just overwhelming. So you don't want to say Cinderella was not able to go to the ball because of her evil stepmother. Her stepsisters were able to go meet the prince, but Cinderella was forced to stay at home. She was given a list of chores and often wore rags. Then, as she was crying because she was upset, her fairy godmother came and... That's a lot of information. That's pretty much summarizing most of the story of Cinderella, when in reality, all your quote was transformed rags to riches. So we don't need the entire plot summary. All you want to do is find the event that specifically takes place around that time in the book, just so that your reader knows not the entire story, but when this event in the story that they're already familiar with took place. So remember, your context sentences are a plot clue. They include a plot clue that helps the reader understand what was happening in the story at the time that the quote's content occurred/was noted.